When we talk about protecting American families and restoring the nation, rhetoric is everywhere. But actions speak louder than slogans. The MAGA and MAHA movements, supposedly champions of freedom and constitutional rights, remain deafeningly silent on one of the most critical issues of our time, the repeal of Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. This unconstitutional law has stripped communities of their rights, endangered our children, and perpetuated outdated safety guidelines for wireless radiation exposure. If supporters of these movements truly care about America's future, why aren't they screaming at the top of their lungs to repeal Section 704? Their silence is as fake as a $3 bill. What is Section 704 and why does it matter? Section 704, a relic of the Clinton administration, was embedded in the Telecommunications Act of 1996. At its core, this law prohibits local governments from blocking wireless infrastructure like cell towers based on health concerns, binds courts to disregard health evidence in legal cases challenging wireless deployments, forces compliance with outdated FCC safety standards that only consider thermal heating effects of radiation, ignoring decades of research on non-thermal biological harm. In effect, Section 704 silences communities, denies parents the right to protect their children, and prioritizes telecom profits over public health. A Clinton-era betrayal. How Section 704 became law. Section 704 wasn't just a policy failure, it was a product of systemic corruption. During the Clinton-Epstein era, corporate interests dictated policy, and Wall Street's influence overshadowed public health. This law cemented telecom giants' power over local communities, ignored early warnings from scientists about the dangers of radio frequency radiation, RFR, betrayed constitutional principles like the 10th Amendment, stripping states and municipalities of their rights. This toxic legacy has persisted for nearly 3 decades, leaving parents powerless as cell towers are erected near schools, playgrounds, and homes. Outdated FCC guidelines, a misclassification of RFR risks. The FCC's safety standards established in 1996 are woefully out of date. These guidelines only consider thermal effects, whether radiation heats tissue. They fail to account for non-thermal biological effects like oxidative stress, DNA damage, and neurological disruption. Long-term exposure risks, especially for children with thinner skulls and developing brains, are completely overlooked. Findings from landmark studies like the National Toxicology Program and the Ramazzini Institute have provided clear evidence linking RFR to cancer and neurological harm. In 2021, a U.S. Court of Appeals ruled that the FCC failed to justify its reliance on these outdated guidelines, highlighting the need for modern science-based standards. Yet no action has been taken. Where is the outrage? MAGA and MAHA's deafening silence. Supporters of the MAGA and MAHA movements claim to stand for constitutional rights, family values, and the health of future generations. So why aren't they demanding the repeal of Section 704 and an overhaul of FCC guidelines? If Section 704 is unconstitutional, where is the movement to restore local control? If children's health is under threat, where are the voices demanding updated safety standards? Instead of addressing these issues, these movements have focused on surface-level culture wars, ignoring one of the most pressing threats to American families. A fake commitment to freedom. Without action on Section 704, MAGA and MAHA are complicit in allowing telecom giants to dictate policy, endanger children, and erode constitutional rights. Actions, not hashtags, prove authenticity. Silence on this issue reveals hypocrisy. What the science tells us, RFR risks are real. A growing body of research underscores the dangers of radiofrequency radiation, particularly for children. Cancer. The National Toxicology Program found clear evidence that RFR causes cancer in rats, including heart schwannomas and brain gliomas. The Ramazzini Institute confirmed these findings at exposure levels far below FCC limits. Neurological damage. Studies show that RFR disrupts calcium signaling, causes oxidative stress, and impairs brain development. A Yale study linked prenatal RFR exposure to ADHD-like symptoms in mice. Reproductive harm. RFR damages sperm, disrupts hormonal balance, and impairs mitochondrial function, threatening fertility and future generations. The Bio-Initiative Report. This comprehensive review of over 1,300 studies highlights the urgent need for stricter exposure limits, especially for vulnerable populations like children and pregnant women. Section 704's impact on communities. Under Section 704, cell towers can be placed dangerously close to schools, homes, and playgrounds, with no legal recourse for parents or local governments. For example, my own 7-year-old child attends a school just 460 feet from a cell tower. The Bio-Initiative Report recommends a minimum distance of 500 meters or 1,640 feet to reduce exposure risks. Across the United States, parents face similar dilemmas, powerless to protect their children from chronic RF radiation. A constitutional crisis. Section 704 violates core constitutional principles. The 10th Amendment strips local governments of authority over health-related zoning decisions. The First Amendment silences citizens by barring health concerns from court cases. This isn't just a public health issue. It's a constitutional betrayal. A call to action. What needs to happen? Repeal Section 704. President Trump and other leaders must prioritize the repeal of this unconstitutional law. Restoring local control is essential for protecting children and upholding constitutional rights. Update FCC guidelines. Modern safety standards must incorporate non-thermal biological effects, set stricter limits for chronic low-level exposure, and protect vulnerable populations like children, pregnant women, and the immunocompromised. Invest in independent research. The United States should lead global efforts to understand radiofrequency radiation risks, not lag behind countries like Iraq, where more research is currently being conducted on these health effects. Microwave News pointed this out. Why isn't the United States leading here? Hold MAGA and MAHA accountable. If these movements claim to stand for freedom and family, they must champion this cause. Their silence on Section 704 and FCC reform betrays their stated values. What you can do: raise awareness, share information about Section 704 and its impact on children's health, educate others about the science behind radiofrequency radiation risks, demand action, contact your representatives and urge them to support the repeal of Section 704, push for legislation requiring the FCC to adopt modern safety standards, protect your family, limit wireless exposure at home by using wired connections whenever possible. Keep devices away from children, especially during sleep and when using phones for long periods. A fight for the future. Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act is more than just bad policy. It's an assault on constitutional rights, public health, and the future of our children. Its repeal is long overdue. For MAGA and MAHA supporters, this issue is a litmus test for authenticity. If you truly care about restoring America's greatness, protecting families, and defending freedom, then you must demand action on this unconstitutional law. Silence is complicity. President Trump and other leaders have an opportunity to correct this injustice, update safety standards, and restore local control. The time to act is now. Our children's future depends on it. RF Safe, an organization that's been championing public health and safer technology since the 1990s. Our core message is simple. Electromagnetic radiation isn't just about heating effects. Non-thermal biological impacts can pose real risks, especially for children. Recent scientific studies and a 2021 federal court ruling show that current FCC guidelines, unchanged since 1996, are outdated. These standards only account for thermal effects and ignore critical findings linking radiofrequency exposure to DNA damage, oxidative stress, and cancer. Notably, the National Toxicology Program found clear evidence of carcinogenic activity, yet that research has stalled just when it's needed most. Industry influence has also blocked meaningful change. The FCC's revolving door with telecommunications lobbyists has left us with regulations that favor profits over public safety. Section 704 of the Telecommunications Act strips local communities of the power to oppose cell tower placements due to health concerns, effectively silencing public input. We're calling for 5 major actions. Update FCC safety guidelines to reflect non-thermal risks. Resume NTP cancer research to build on the alarming results already found. End regulatory capture so public health, not corporate profit, drives policy. Amend the Telecom Act of 1996 to restore local rights. Make the FDA enforce Public Law 9602, ensuring continued research into radio frequency risks. If you want to help, contact your elected officials, share credible information, and advocate for stricter science-based standards. For more details, call 727-610-1188 or visit rfsafe.com. Together, we can push for safer technology and protect current and future generations. Thank you. Visit RF Safe to learn more.